Hello everyone, this is Pallavi Das from Pawai Live, and we are here on the 8th of Jan with something we hoped we will not need to bring to you again, which is another conversation with a leading doctor about the continuing wrath of COVID. So without much ado, I'm going to get Dr. Pahuja on the call. Hi, how are you? Good to see you. However, and
Thank
whatever
you.
the
Very
state is,
good.
it's always good to see you.
Yes, with this kind of mayhem going on, we always have to be prepared. And of course, it's good to see each other and discuss all these things and, get a little bit of confidence how to go about this. So thank you,
Absolutely.
Pallavi, again for inviting me and this platform. And I'm sure we will really try to help each other in this and understanding this and, helping people in this situation.
I am not going to get into introductions because everybody here knows you. I'm going to jump straight to the bottom line of the conversation, which is this whole thing about Omicron. My first question to you is, and I have a lot of questions from a lot of people around Pawai. My first question is it confirmed that all that everyone's getting is Omicron?
Uh, Not really, because if you see when we had a previous Delta wave, that was a Delta variant which was had affected us, and it was still moving with in a small speed. We were still continuing to get get those cases. So any new variant comes, it is not going to immediately overtake the dominant variant. The world over, the Delta was dominant. So whatever cases we are getting, they are not all Omicron. It will take some time for transition to happen. How we are able to identify by some tests which we do on RT-PCR when we do the something which is a very specific kind of a technique we use to understand whether there is a S gene dropout. I'll speak to about that later. We are able to understand that there is still a delta wave going on, or there is still a merger of delta and omicron, which is called delmicron, which is also identified. Delmicron is like a merger of two viruses together. So it's like a marriage happened. Transition is going to take time. Name change is going to take time. Registration of the marriage is going to take time. This is the same thing which we do after the marriage, how the transition happens slowly when the bride comes to the groom's house. This is the same thing when the Omicron comes to Delta variant's house. It's a dominant variant. It's going to take some time for the bride to get adjusted. Omicron will come. It is there, but it will show it will show in full force after 1 or 2, 3 weeks maybe.
I can trust a top dog like you making fun of or making such an interesting, what do you say, I'm forgetting the word right now, but very interesting comparison to marriage. Well, anyways, so which means that the protocol that the doctors or that we have been following for Delta pretty much is somewhat applicable even now, and in the cases that you're seeing in the past few weeks in Bombay, in Powai.
Absolutely, and more so because Omicron is a very, very infective and a very fast transmission virus, which is going to infect you in no time before anybody else travels. There are many viruses in the atmosphere. See, they are also competing with each other. It's not one virus which is living in this stratosphere or atmosphere. Before any other virus gets you, it is the Omicron which is going to get you. So that's why it is important that we have to use these precautions, what we were doing before with doubly so, double masking, because it's very infective, transmits very fast, and I think we should be more careful with Omicron. I'm not saying that it is going to is being more to be more deadly and all, because we know that there is details or research is there that there's not much of a deaths because of course we have been vaccinated, we have herd immunity, but the transmission of viruses so fast, it is going to break the health system. If there's so many cases are rising and so fast, you have never seen this kind of rise in cases ever in the history of epidemic. So that is Omicron for you.
That is the fear, and not many people understand that, unfortunately, and which is why I want to ask you another thing that what is your take on the very common view that is forming thanks to our very famous WhatsApp university that Omicron is very chill, आके जाएगा बस खत्म हो जाएगा, just bear it out, it's okay, एक बार हो जाए अच्छा है, at least निपटा.
So I agree or disagree also with this point of view. I agree because there are some studies or there are some speculation with the scientists as well that the way the Omicron is taking over as a force to reckon with and wiping out the Delta, which have been more dangerous variant for us, and is going to give you herd immunity for the virus, might be a boon for us or a blessing in disguise. Yes, it is possibility, that is all theoretical. But remember, when such kind of viruses come, they also cause a lot of collateral damage because the health system gets into tremendous pressure. Please don't understand that it is only me. I'll get mild symptoms, I'll get infected, and I'll eat my antibiotics, and it will be all over. It's not like that. There are so many thousands of patients who are getting affected, and there are people who have a genuine needs for hospitalization. And if that happens, these people who really need hospitalization in terms of other illnesses suffer, and death will increase because of that. So don't think that this kind of Omicron will cause mild symptoms, but this kind of Omicron is also going to really put strain, a lot of burnout amongst the healthcare workers. We have already infected, half of the people are infected. 200 residents are already infected all over in Mumbai. If doctors are not there, nurses are not there, who is going to cater to all these people? Who is going to take care of the surgeries? Who is going to look after the patients, their medicines, their IVs? And that's going to create problem. That's going to create chaos. So it's not that it is just about me and my symptoms. It's about the entire system which is going to be collapsed with such kind of viruses. So we have to be very, very careful.
Very eloquently said, and thank you for saying that, because if I may say so, and if you may vet it at the end of this, that most of us tend to become very myopic. Me, my family, my immediate circle, my friends, my extended family, and that's about it. It's such times like pandemics, we have to think about the others, whether it be the vaccination, whether it be masking. If you have got a COVID once, you can't just go out and say, ab mujhe ho gaya, theek hai, ab main ja raha hu khulle mein. So I think it's a lot about caring for the system, because you are right, Dr. Pahuja. I can only hear and see that doctors are getting affected. If they are even if they're not severely affected, but they are out of the system, which means without many medical practitioners, any which ways, there will be. I think it's very obvious where this is going. We have a very intelligent audience. We don't need to repeat this. So please, everyone, mind it that it's not just about us and our symptoms. It's about the society at large, our maids, our drivers, people who depend on us for livelihood, everyone. So moving on to that, Doctor, this is a very large conversation and you and I would love to talk, but we have so many pointed questions that I want to get to that, because audience is really keen on hearing a doctor like you straight on, because doctors these days don't have time to answer extra questions. All of you have at least 100 people on your telecalling list, and all of them are facing issues. So that's why I pulled you away from your schedule so that you can answer mass questions. So I'm going to categorize these. First are symptoms. So everyone who's hearing us, we will try and go in a cyclical order. We will try. Otherwise, later on this channel and on Dr. Pahuja's and Hiranmani Hospital's feeds, we will try and put small clips of information or highlighted flyers and infographics in the works. So the first thing, Dr. Pahuja, these days, whatever is it that you're seeing, the married or the single strains of virus, what are the most common symptoms we have to note out for?
So what we are seeing now currently, it's a lot of upper respiratory tract symptoms. We are seeing a lot of sneezing, cold, blocked nose, sore throat, headache, body ache, fever, and very high grade fever and kind of fatigue. These things are which we are seeing with a new variant or new strain. But also we are seeing this loss of smell and loss of taste, which was with the earlier variant. So those are the symptoms which we are able to identify. Are we dealing with the Delta variant or are we dealing with the Omicron variant? If you have a high grade fever, if you have a loss of smell and taste going ahead, though you had blocked nose and sneezing and all those initially, probably it is a Delta variant and not Omicron, because Omicron is not supposed to give you loss of smell and taste. So that is a way we can differentiate that this is not a Delta variant or this is not a Omicron variant. So symptoms and largely can give you some idea whether this is Omicron or is a Delta. So these are common symptoms which we are seeing. Apart from there is a nausea, there's abdominal pain, and some people are presented with us with the diarrhea also initially. to start with, and then later on, 3 days later, they had fever and so on and so forth. So nausea, diarrhea are less common symptoms, but upper respiratory tract symptoms, which I just enumerated, are more commoner these days.
Okay, doctor. And so this sounds pretty much like the first time around. And what are the first line of treatments if it happens in the middle of the night? We can't get hold of a doctor. We don't have a doctor or GP that we call our own. What is the first line of safe treatment? Caveat being obviously the comorbid or the elderly who have specialist doctors and medicines going on.
So I understand when you get such kind of symptoms, there is a first of all panic that we cannot get hold of a doctor to understand what kind of a medicines we should start with and so on and so forth. Sometimes doctor's appointments are clogged for 1 or 2 days. You are not able to get hold of the doctor. So there is no need to panic in this situation. Basic requirement of any viral infection is to manage the patient symptomatically. Symptoms means if you have a fever, take a paracetamol. These medicines are available out on the of the counter. You can just go and buy those medicines. Simple paracetamol. It is safe in the kidney patients also and safe in diabetic patients. Okay, then you can have some kind of anti-allergic medicines which are again safe in diabetics, kidney patients, heart disease, like Allegra or cetirizine. These are the simple, basic, and some multivitamins. Bare minimum, you can start with these medicines, and it will be safe for all kinds of patients, even if they are elderly or they have a kidney disease, so on and so forth. So this has to be started, of course, and steaming and your warm water and vitamins. You can start with those basic things, and then try to speak to your doctor about the other things or other conditions and what next to be done in this situation. RT-PCR, if you can do on your own, that is good now because you don't require any prescriptions. Or if you can do a home kit, don't try to do home test so early because it's not going to be very, very strongly positive initially. As we know that Omicron variant may skip the antigen kit test also. So more the mutations, we know the tests are going to be falsely negative. So that's why we should try and see that you should give a stipulated time duration of at least 48 hours before you do the RT-PCR test. Mind you, till that time you need to isolate and mask everybody at home. Masking everybody will help to help stop the spread of infection.
Doctor, on that note, on the note of masking, if we already know that somebody is infected and everybody has already come in contact with them, is there still merit in masking?
Yes, of course, because see, in those when you have actual symptoms, the rate of infection or the period where the transmission of virus is much swifter and faster, and that is a time where the viral load is very high. So even if you have come in contact with somebody who had not shown symptoms before but started to show symptoms, the chances that you will be infected is much lesser because at that time the viral load is much lesser. So when you have actual symptoms and you isolate yourself, the risk of infection still you can reduce by many percentages. So there is a merit of isolating yourself when you get symptoms and masking everybody. Because as I said, those symptomatic phase, you are going to have a very high viral load and you are going to transmit the infection with much vigor.
On that note, I have a question which is not following the path of my inquiry, but I still want to ask. The rate at which it is growing in cities like ours or in India or abroad, we were to think that it's because of asymptomatic people roaming around and spreading it. Is that not true then? Or is that also a part and then symptomatic not testing? Or is it just, why is it so fast? Why is the R factor so high now?
That's because of the mutations this virus carries. See, everybody has its own characteristics and properties, right? So if you have a Usain Bolt, it has got some characteristics why he can run so fast, because of he's got typical kind of muscle build. He's got particular kind of makeup where he can run so fast 100 meters. You and I cannot run so fast that 100 meters. That virus has got kind of a mutations which makes him spread very fast. Yani, if this virus attaches to the human cells, it multiplies at a very rapid rate. It gets out into the other human body and gets out and infects other human body at a very faster rate because of the mutations, because your immune system is unable to recognize and fight out. So if there is some resistance from your body, the spread can be slower or viral load can be reduced. But there's no resistance from your immune system because the immune system while it tries to identify what is going wrong in the system, by that time this virus has already replicated and gone inside, and always started to come from your mouth or nose and infect other people. So that's the reason it is very difficult to stop the virus, and that's why it is very high transmissibility, because there is 32 mutations or more than 30 mutations at the S protein. Virus has got the S protein. We all know that spike protein, by virtue of which it attaches to the human cells. Okay, so if I do something on this S protein and my immune system is unable to recognize, because this something was different with a different virus, it recognizes that S protein, not this S protein. So because of so many mutations, that's the reason this virus is very fast and has got very high infectivity.
So we are not going to have many convergence at the end of this.
It's not like that. It's possible that you may another French variant is coming. It's going to be much. It's still more infective, they are saying. So you may have a lot of permutation and combinations. But what I have learned personally about viruses, with COVID viruses or influenza viruses, coronavirus are mistake correctors. They don't like mistakes to be made. So they don't like so many mutations. If that comes in their system, probably they become less lethal. Okay, the nascent virus or the Delta virus was a more lethal virus, and that's why studies has been done in Hong Kong, and they have clearly proven that the virus multiplication is 10 to 12 times lesser in lungs than in the upper respiratory tract with the Omicron. So more the mutation the coronavirus makes, mistake correct. If it is not able to correct its mistakes, it is going to be less lethal but more infective. Yes, well, it's an influenza virus. More mistakes it makes, more lethal is going to become. So we had a swine flu epidemic. Remember that. That's why these viruses have different characteristics and properties. So more and more mutations occurs, probably it becomes more and more weakened, and probably it will become endemic. That's why they are saying now with the more mutations, it is likely to become more endemic.
I was going to go there, but I thought then I'm really going to get distracted. But on a lighter note, I really feel like getting into this line of study. I may just apprentice with you for a bit. On back to my symptoms, some mothers mentioned to us that they are resorting to homeopathic or home-based remedies for some starting symptoms. Is that okay, or is that something they can use whilst they get hold of a doctor?
Well, I will never say that you should go for home remedies or home homeopathy remedies, because I don't know the efficacy of those treatments, number one. Number two, I don't know what side effects they are going to cause. So I'm really not sure to comment on those things. Yes, but if it is really helping somebody with home remedies, but I think what measures we are suggesting are very simple. Paracetamol, cetirizine, steam, vitamins. These are very simple measures which anybody can do. There's no need to resort to anything which is very fancy, or something which is not, we don't know whether it's going to help or not. So home remedies like you can do a similar haldi wala doodh and all, that's fine, is not going to harm much, but don't do too much, because it can cause a lot of gastritis. So some people are eating raw garlic, some people are doing kadhas. I don't know what those kadhas can do to a liver. I'm really not sure, because we have seen a lot of drug-induced liver injury with what is called Giloy. People are using that Giloy. The Giloy has caused a lot of liver injuries. We have seen a lot of papers on liver injuries and Giloy. So very importantly, we have to see that before you do anything, try and research that also. When you are trying and seeing paracetamol can cause side effects, type that Giloy and also do the research on Giloy, whether the Giloy is causing the side effects. Please don't blindly trust only Ayurvedic medicines. They also have a problem, and they also cause side effects.
I am having Giloy. I'm suddenly worried now. But I hear you, and it's a very fair response. Doctor, you said that if we don't get hold of a doctor, we can start with these. But let's say things start getting better in a day or day and a half. Then what? Do we still go on to talk to a doctor, or just isolation works and then sitting it out?
Here I will divide the people whether they are immunocompetent or immunocompromised, elderly, with conditions like the diabetes, blood pressure, heart disease. If they are immunocompetent, vaccinated, no conditions, they might. But the problem is that the isolation part, whether due to break or not, because if they have not tested themselves and they want to get out of the house, and they might infect other people. So if they're not sure about the symptoms are persistent, and they have not been able to test themselves, then at least isolate till the time you are symptom free for at least 24 to 48 hours. Then you get out, because then the transmissibility or the viral load will be much lesser. At least that can be done but try and test yourself. Of course, I'm sure that or rapid antigen test can be negative in this circumstances when the viral load is low, or it cannot be picked up because of Omicron. It can skip the test. Try and do RT-PCR. Now we know RT-PCR is also difficult to get 48 to 72 hours. So these are the practical burning issues. That's what I was trying to tell you. There's an immense strain on a healthcare system, and when you're not able to test yourself, how you are going to treat, how do you going to approach, how do you are not going to know there is a going problem waiting for you at 10th day of your illness. So that's another issue which we are going to face. So at least these things, when immunocompetent, doubly vaccinated, they can, wait out till the symptoms are over, and after that they can get out. If they are elderly people with conditions or young adults also with heart disease, now we see a lot of people getting stented or have diabetes, they should try and speak to the doctor, because I will not suggest that they should just say, okay, my symptoms are over, it's not going to do anything to me. Maybe on 7th, 8th, 9th day, you don't know, the oxygen starts dropping without your knowledge, because you never followed up those, and the virus was multiplying inside your system, and the immune system was completely unaware, didn't give you any signals. So that's very important to understand, that when you have a immunocompromised status, when you are elderly, you need to be supervised by somebody who knows how the virus behaves. And that's the reason why you should be talking to your doctor in these two circumstances.
Doctor, for the benefit of the audience, can you just quickly enumerate immunocompromised people categories starting from
Absolutely.
children?
Sure. So children generally are immunocompetent, most likely, unless they have some medical conditions like sickle cell disease or some congenital anomalies. They are otherwise immunocompetent, and they don't have generally pose much issues. They generally have fever for 1 or 2 days, may have mild cough, and it'll settle down in 4 or 5 days. So generally children, what we have seen, and adolescent age group also, tend to do much better than the adults and who have conditions or elderly people. If the conditions, medical conditions in adults, of course we know heart disease, diabetes, chronic lung disease, asthma, obesity is one of the indicators which we saw, or in the conditions where we saw the most people infected with obesity, with coronavirus, had a higher chances of staying in the hospital, higher chances of getting into oxygen, higher chances of getting onto ventilator mortality. So obesity was one of the prime conditions which we saw in the second wave as well. So obesity is one condition which also can be termed as comorbid condition or medical illness. Then it is not just the disorder of shape or size. It is really a disease. That's why we see a lot of problems with obesity. Then we also have the cancers, people on chemotherapy, people on dialysis. These are immunocompromised people. Or people taking steroids or immunosuppressants. People who have done the kidney transplants or liver transplants, they are taking immunocompromised, the immunosuppressions. They are also immunosuppressed. So these are the categories of the people who should be very, very careful.
Very clear. Now, doctor, all people have different kinds of doctors. Some doctors have more experience of dealing with COVID patients over the last 2 years, and some may have relatively lesser. Of course, you will not go into a judgment, and I wouldn't want you to, but still, if there are there certain indicators, and I know I have come to you with few in the last year and a half, are there some worrying signs when you may be under some doctor that you really should rush to either a hospital or an experienced COVID practitioner? What are the
Absolutely.
few?
Yeah. So there are few signs and there are few scenarios where we should be very, very worried. First of all, if you have been responding to the medicines initially, the fever is gone, you're feeling better, and suddenly after 4 or 5 days, the fever comes again, So really high fever again after few days of getting better, feeling fatigued, symptoms coming back again, is not a good sign. That means you are going in an immune phase. That means your immune system is either not acting or reacting to the virus very well. This is an indication of that. So that point of time, you should immediately contact your doctor. This is number one. That is for either immunocompetent people, adults, vaccinated, irrespective of anybody who gets symptoms again. Second big spike of symptoms, he should be speaking to the doctor immediately or going to the hospital. Second, if your oxygen is dropping below 95%, you are doing a walk test or you're monitoring the oxygen at home, you check your oximeter, oxygen. Now also there is a lot of issues with checking the oxygen. at home, because people get panic. My oxygen is 93, 92, then it goes to 98. What is this? What should I do? It is normal, low. The best way to monitor the oxygen is keep your hands steady, sit quietly in one place, and leave the oximeter steady for 30 seconds at least. And there is a waveform on the oximeter. I'm saying so because it's very important to educate on oximeter. Waveform is important. Waveform should be very smooth. There is a waveform on the oximeter. You can see the waves moving on the oximeter. There's a pulse and there's the oxygen marker there. So you can see the waveform moving very smooth. When the waveform is very smooth, whatever number appears after 20-30 seconds, means not the first number, wait for 20-30 seconds, the number which steadies is your oxygen levels. So don't panic when you see first is 93, in my oxygen level is low. No, wait for 20-30 seconds, allow the numbers to settle down, allow the waveform to settle down, and that is your reading of oxygen. So this is how you should take the oxygen. And if you want to confirm doubly, walk for 6 minutes. That's the best at which you can do. Walk for 6 minutes, and then you can put a finger in your oximeter, same finger which you can use, either middle or the index finger, and sit quietly again and check it after steadying your hand for 20-30 seconds. So this is a way you should see. And if it is dropping below 95%, you must go to the hospital. Number 3, immunocompromised individuals. Now I'm saying clearly because they may not come with any symptoms initially. They may start to feel fatigued. They may start to lose their appetite. They may start to lose their interest in the surroundings. Very different kind of symptoms they will have. Interest in surroundings, they won't eat. They will have a mild fever again. And these are the symptoms. You may not see any change in oxygen also this time. They should immediately contact a doctor, because this is a time when the immune system is beginning to react in a different way in the body. So when they are feeling very extremely fatigued, they want to lie down all the time. When they are not eating at the time, when they have carrying low grade fever, or they have lost interest in the surroundings, these are the times, or becoming drowsy, you must contact the doctor or must go to the hospital immediately.
That's very helpful.
For breathlessness is a later phase. Feeling breathless, everybody will tell you, but these are the symptoms which are very subtle. So people are coming to me now 3-4 days. I'm seeing continuously people are coming to me in the OPD. I'm sending down to the emergency because they come with oxygen of 88, 89%, and they're not feeling anything. They're just feeling little weak, little fatigued, and the oxygen level was low. This is called hypoxia. We know that there's no feeling that you are breathless, but still oxygen level is low. And that is very typical of COVID-19 pneumonia or COVID-related immune dysfunction.
This is very similar to what happened in last year, right? When there was a lot of misconception that we are fine, that there is no breathlessness, I'm okay. So is that happening again right now with this
yes,
new?
Because coronavirus is coming with this kind of this hypoxia was noted in the first wave itself. When the first virus, the ancestral virus came, this is typical. So these characteristics will be carried forward by the most of the coronavirus or the variants also. So they will be having these characteristics of hypoxia if the immune system is not very good. If you're the immunocompromised, very elderly people, all these conditions which we just talked about, typically in those patients, you will see this kind of hypoxia happening.
Very helpful, and I'm glad you spoke about the 6-minute walk test. Doctor, after this call, can you send us a video of this conversation, of this wave and big thing? We'll put it on our channel so that people can watch it.
Sure, I will do that.
Oximeter thing, because even I didn't know about it. Of course, I've always followed whatever you've said, but I just want everyone to be very sure, because people these days are using their phones to check their SpO2 and myriad number of machines. So what is your view on the phone indicator of SpO2? Is that accurate?
I will not suggest to use those because they are still not tried in the clinical trials. Those actually the SpO2s also which are there, they have to be ISO certified or FDA certified. Now because of the shortage of those meters also, everything is in the market. So that's another challenge to identify which is a good meter and which is not a good meter. So that is of course, but you can really find out on internet what are the ISO certified meters, and you can purchase from the pharmacy on the goods store and or order online. You will get it plenty of them. So, but when you're trying to see, at least have 2 meters at home of different makes so that you can understand whether one is different from another. This will eliminate the bias, if any, so that you can understand whether your meter is working fine or not fine.
Very helpful. Thank you, doctor, for answering these very silly questions, maybe to you, but very important because people have these questions and no one to ask. I'm going to move on to first treatment, although you have covered a lot of it. So we've already answered. Should we ask the doctor for what to do? Okay, about home tests. You said wait for a couple of days after the symptoms. Is that what you said for the
Yes,
home?
I will suggest that do not try and haste the testing. Immediately, what I'm seeing, people even, in fact, when they are not even having symptoms and somebody is infected at home, they go for RT-PCR, and this actually puts a lot of load unnecessary for RT-PCR testing, and that may not turn out to be negative, and you may in the false belief that I don't have virus. So that is not the way you should be doing it. You should doing your mask is the best thing which you can will help you to prevent. So you can at least start masking first, see if you get any symptoms, and then you test yourself. Okay, that is very important. Or if you think now that most of the people are affected now at home, you can test after 2 or 3 days, because it takes 3 or 4 days of transition phase before the virus starts to show or multiply, and that much viral load should be there for the RT-PCR to actually catch the virus inside. So that is very important that you wait out for certain period, like 48 hours will be the right time when you will actually get a proper result. The yield will be much better if you do a RAT test or rapid antigen or RT-PCR after getting symptoms.
Very clear, doctor, and especially because we are talking of predominantly Powai and around, I wanted to ask you, because a lot of people ask us this question. We're living in small houses or decent enough houses, but with enough people in the house. Now, if 1 or 2 people start getting infected and they show symptoms, mostly children or elders, and most of the others are asymptomatic, of course, everyone should isolate. That is definitely a given. But what should the usual protocol in the house be? Like no external no mates, and how should a family behave in such a situation? Because that is a very common thing today. People are clueless as to what to do. Sasuma in one room, bacha in another room. How does one? What are people doing for this? I mean, do you have any expert opinions on this?
Sure. We have a scientific opinion on that. I have a complete scientific opinion on that. And China has showed the way by just putting out a lot of papers on this. When the family is affected, what they should do, and what they showed that complete family masking has reduced the transmission by at least for 40 to 50%. So they had proven by the papers they did above. There were small studies. They said that if you complete family masks when there's an infection at home, it really helps to stop the transmission. I think most of the people are doing, but if you develop mask fatigue, then it's going to be a difficult thing, because most of the elderly doesn't want to wear the mask at home. They don't feel like comfortable, or children is very difficult to make them wear mask. These are the challenges which we have in Indian context and Indian settings, because of the whatever behavioral issues or whatever beliefs which we have. The mask से ये हो जाएगा, वो हो जाएगा. So nobody wants to wear the mask at home. घर में क्या mask पहनना है? But that has been shown to reduce the infection by 40 to 50%. So China has given you some clue that if the families behave responsibly, even if they are infected and mask, in fact, the people who are infected, they should doubly mask when they are mingling. If they are isolated in a separate room, then it's fine. They may not wear a mask. But when they are with somebody, or they are trying to just take somebody or something from somebody, or trying to converse, everybody should be in the mask. And that will help to reduce the transmission. So this is the way out. If you're in the small Mumbai homes where you have 2 bedrooms or 3 bedrooms or 1 bedroom, this is the only way where we can actually work on those. And washing hands, of course, will also help.
Doctor, in a situation where everybody is symptomatic, nobody really terribly placed to go to a hospital, but who looks after each other? What do you recommend?
If everybody is symptomatic and everybody knows that they have got the similar, because as I said, Omicron is the only virus which they are going to get. There's no other thing if they have suffered some infection now, it is going to be the same virus. So there's no harm in staying together, cooking for each other and catering for each other, because everybody is infected. Some people ask me whether I should go in the other room. My wife is there. She thinks I will get infected because her symptoms started, 5 days back. Mine are started now. So if I will stay with my wife, she's trying to, remove. She's saying, go away from my room. You will infect me again. So these are the things which I'm hearing, but it's not like that. It's just I don't know, there's certainly some other issues why she's moving you out of the room, but it is not like that. The coronavirus is same in both of you. Even if you got infected 5 days back, your immune system is able to protect you, and you're not going to get infected so soon. So remember that part. Even if it's a Delta variant or Omicron. Another question will come. The people are super smart. Suppose this is hers a Delta variant, my is Omicron variant. Then what will happen? So see, these are the questions which come. But it cannot be like that. Suppose one variant has affected you, the same variant you have got, because you can't have a different variants unless something different. You're living in different homes. I don't know, but it has to be same variant where you will have the infection. So it has to be same variant where you're not going to have a problem. So at least CDC says 3 months you are protected once you got the infection. Although there have been documentation on infection after 4 weeks or 6 weeks also after getting the infection, but that is a very small percentage. But still, you are protected. You don't have a problem, so you can all stay together.
That's I don't know if that's a good thing or a bad thing for people hearing us, but I'm very clear on that. Would you recommend if more than 2 or 3 people, critical main people in the family, are going through severe symptoms, for them to then contact the medical authority so that someone can look after them? Because if each of them is not able to tend to important factors and hear people like you and make those decisions, should those decisions be then taken early of hospitalization or sending to a center?
Yes, a very, very pertinent question, Pallavi. This is important where suppose caregivers are also affected, then is rightly for them to take the help of medical facilities where the patients can be admitted and they can be catered to. Of course, sometimes we also tell the person who's infected himself, you can come and join. In our hospital, we have made a policy at least that they come and join the person who is infected or is unable to cater themselves, or who's anxious, so that we can provide treatment without anxiety. He sees somebody who's belongs to his or her home and he is there with him. There are mild symptoms, of course, so you also being taken care of, and of course the other person who's there, who's really infected and who's really unable to cater himself, he's elderly, he's had severe symptoms, also is also being taken care of. So I think that is a right call to make, that if you are infected and if you have don't have enough energy or strength to take care of the elderly people, better to put them in the hospital so that they are catered to.
Very thanks for that, because we hear this on mother groups very often, that I'm not well, my husband's not well, my child's not well, my mother-in-law is not well, what to do? So I think that's a very fair response.
So that Pallavi, that also answers your question that Omicron is not mild. If everybody is infected, who's going to take care of whom? And that's the reason there's a collateral damage which happens, because the caregiver is suffering. The care which should be given to the patient who requires is not going, and that's why there could be repercussions of that apart. So we have to understand that very seriously.
And the doctors are suffering, and the medical workers are suffering. So I think all of us, Doctor, top of your head, although I don't know if this is the right thing to ask you, if people in Powai are going through such situation, are they supposed to call BMC or hospital? What is the first course of what is the first point of contact for people who really want help?
So there are the BMC, they can. Yeah, so in this situation, when the bed become an issue, because a lot of cases are there, the hospitals are full, it becomes really difficult to understand where to go. But there's a BMC Twitter handle or BMC site where you can easily see, numbers which are being given, where you can find beds. In fact, there is a central, they made a central war room where you can actually contact and they can help you with the bed. So the BMC is well prepared. Actually, we saw in the Delta wave also. Now probably the process is much smoother than it was, because they were learning. There was a learning curve initially how to manage that kind of scale of epidemic, but now they have experience for last 1 or 2 years. So that process is much smoother. In fact, now I was hearing about the Madad and Maps. There was something site which is made by the American and the Indian doctors, where you can actually see the map of India and understand where are the hospitals, where are the beds, where is the oxygen bed available, where are the ventilators available. Everything is available on a click. So there's the media and the internet and the artificial intelligence has made the things very easy. And you can follow the BMC Twitter handles. They can give you a lot of information. Actually, they are very prompt now. They are responding as well.
Very, very, very helpful, Doctor. Thank you so much, Doctor. On the line of treatment, a few simple questions because people do ask them. Any nutritional advice, since you are a doctor and expert on that, during COVID or recovery or?
Yeah, I think basically try to keep it simple, and don't complicate with the fat foods or something which is which we don't know or we don't have not been eating earlier. Make it simple by taking a lot of vegetables. Okay, take a lot of fruits, hydrate yourself very well. These are the very simple measures you should do. Try and eat proteins. Body need proteins, because any illness will cause a muscle breakdown. It will cause a lot of catabolic phase where the muscle protein is broken down and you feel very fatigued. So protein intake should be adequate. Otherwise, also Indian diet lacks proteins, which we see. The protein intake is very poor, especially who are vegetarians. Their protein intake is poor. The diabetics, their protein intake is poor. So if you are not eating actually a non-veg source of proteins, at least try to make it up with a veg source of proteins, or add additional protein powders to your diet. You can ask dietitian or doctor about the protein sources and they'll help you with that. So protein powders really will help you to give you that kind of a protein. But otherwise, keep it simple. Less carbohydrates, more of vegetables, more of fruits, hydration, nuts, seeds. Of course, somebody likes seeds also. Nuts, seeds are very important here, and enough protein in the diet. That is to make the things very simple.
Thank you. And I'm asking you because I know you're an expert on that. And on that note, for protein, because there are a lot of mothers, lactating mothers, for vegetarians, is there, and I'm putting in the spot, you can skip this answer. Do you prefer, like a rapid fire, do you prefer soy-based whey proteins or, whey protein, the dairy based ones, for safely for vegetarians?
Both are good enough. If you whey and soy, there's no difference. But there are some studies showing that a soy enough. If you take more of soy proteins, there can be issues with the breast enlargement, engorgement in males because of the high estrogen content of the soy proteins. So there's some kind of studies which were done. But I think at large you can mix and match with both the proteins, because we are not going to eat more in a massive amount. We are going to eat in a very small amount. So that's fine. You can choose any of those. Soy or whey are fine. But if you are somebody who's into heavy workout and want to eat a lot of soy proteins, may not be good for you, because we have seen a lot of estrogen hormones, increase in the estrogen hormones with soy proteins.
Very helpful. Thank you, doctor. Can you again repeat this answer? How long after testing negative on a home test should we wait before interacting with people? If you can give me a timeline. Day 1, I feel symptomatic. Day 2, 3, I test myself. I'm positive. Like that. So that people who are not getting an RT-PCR do not infect other people by mistake.
Very simple it is. It is not based on the test which you have done, whether you're negative or positive. If you have done the test earlier, you are thought to be positive. Now it is positive result in front of you. At least now the BMC says 7 days you should be home quarantine, because now we have reduced the quarantine phase. As I said, because of the vaccination, you're able to eliminate the virus very fast, and that's the reason the quarantine phase is getting truncated. I will answer this question of yours, but I want to come to that point that vaccination, how it's helping us to, reduce the quarantine phase. And now we'll have more and more better vaccines where the quarantine phase will become lesser and lesser, whereby probably there will be a phase where when it will become endemic, we are not going to quarantine anybody. That will happen. And there will be nasal vaccines, which is going to eliminate the virus in the nose itself. So whenever if somebody is infected also, he's not going to infect others. So when the quarantine phase will be hardly anything. Of course, you will be staying home because of your own illness, because you are not able to work or not able to feel good about working. So till you are better and you have energy, you can stay at home. That is when we will be reaching at that point of time. At this point of time, when you are completely out of symptoms, wait out for more than 48 hours. And after that, you are good to go out. As I said, this is the right way of breaking the quarantine. Or as said by BMC, 7 days after the onset of symptoms is what they are saying.
Perfect. You're a fantastic teacher. It's visually clear in front of my eyes now. I'm moving swiftly to vaccinations, and we'll come back to this question to finish up these questions. Yesterday, in the Bombay summary, it was very clear that 96% of the people on oxygen beds or in a terrible state were unvaccinated. That means that's a clear indication that vaccination and double vaccination has been the main reason for keeping us safe in en masse, excluding the children right now. Is that correct? Would you want to talk about that?
Yes, of course. That's a way. That's the reason why we are saying that we don't have many deaths. Of course, somebody can say that we had to have a herd immunity. That's why, because Delta Y was so infective that everybody got herd immunity, and now that's why there are no much deaths. But it all doesn't only belong to the herd immunity, because if that would have been the case, then we would have not been infected again. So it also depends on the vaccination, how we are boosting your immune system. One infection is not going to give you immunity forever. That's with the viruses. So we have to keep boosting the immune system by giving the vaccines until we achieve, because we are also in the learning phase. Scientists are also learning how the virus is behaving. And that's why we will have a specific vaccines going ahead, that this kind of a strain is there, give this kind of vaccine so that we don't have many infections also. And of course, the hospitalization will not be required at that point of time. So vaccination is the key going ahead. And as soon as we will advance further, we'll see much better vaccines than what we are having now. So yes, vaccination is very, very important, I will say.
Dr. Boosters, are we seeing those soon? I'm hearing from a lot of people, of course, not through, it's not legal or whatever the right term is, but people are saying that if you've got 2 Covishields, you should go for a Covaxin booster and the other way around. Is that correct? Is that what doctors are propagating? Or is this conjecture?
So there are 2 school of thoughts in this. Basically, some people argue that because as a children, we've been boosted with a similar kind of vaccines. If you see the booster doses are being given with a similar kind of vaccine, so why not boost with a similar kind of vaccine? Suppose you're taking Covaxin, take a Covaxin. If you're taking Covishield, take a Covishield. But the issue here with the previous boosting was that we didn't have many platforms of vaccine. That is my counterpoint to that. That we didn't have any platform. We have only one single platform, and we used those because nobody was studying those, because the disease got eradicated. This disease is not in much of was not talked about. It is not going of not much public health important at that point of time. So boosting continued with a similar kind of vaccines. When you have a multiple platforms available, and the data has shown that mix and match, of course the UK data is there, US data is there, that Pfizer and exchange with AstraZeneca Oxford vaccine, that is Covishield, exchange with that, and Oxford followed by Pfizer, has given a much better immunogenicity and better results in terms of antibody boosting. We can try out the mix and match, but we don't have our own data in India. That Covishield mix match with Covaxin mix match with Covishield, whether there is a better immunogenicity if you mix match. We don't have that kind of data, but I extrapolate from Pfizer and Covishield data from UK and US. I may be in position to say that mix and match may help in giving a better immunogenicity. So that's the reason you might go with mix and match, but till the government says that, you can't do that. The government has to come out with a clear white papers that this is what you should be following. So at this point of time, we have Covishield people taking Covishield boosters, Covaxin people taking Covaxin boosters. Nothing at all. Of course, Covovax is a good vaccine, Cobrivax is a good vaccine, which has been studied as a booster, but again, still there is a probably supply chain issue with that. So we may not see it as a booster very soon, but I think that will be a very good vaccine if you take it as a booster vaccine.
I'm going to ask a deeper question, and I'm sorry about that. I know I'll take more time, but I really want to, because I know people will maybe get confused on this one. Why cannot we extrapolate a British or an American conclusion, scientific conclusion in India? Is it the genes? Is it our separate construct? What is it?
Yes, it's ethnicity. It's a race, a genes. The way we fight out the infection. So there are differences in that, of course. So that's why probably you need to look at the geographical structure, the population, the logistics, the politics in the country. All this will play an important role, because it's not only one thing which we are looking at, that is a virus or how to vaccinate the people. There are so many other issues which people have to sit around and talk it out, and then only decide and come to the conclusion that what vaccine they can provide, because it should be in their the supply chain should be there. There should be so much supply of vaccine because of billion population. we should have that kind of the sources, so resources to do that. So that's the reason probably these decisions will be influenced by the data, by the geographical area which we are belonging in, politics and policies, and of course supply chain.
Thanks, Doctor. Doctor, on that note, very, very important question, which is children and vaccination. So, what are you recommending? 15 and above, Covaxin. What are the various vaccinations out there? Are you for, or do you recommend any or every vaccination that the children get hold of that they are allowed to, or do you have any particular view on this? And where all can they go for this?
No, I think if you think that you can get all of any vaccine for children, it's not right. You will get only Covaxin, which is the proven vaccine and which has the data in India. So I think you should go with the safer vaccine, kill vaccine for children, because it is a much better vaccine to start with, as a safety issue. Though, because children are generally immunocompetent, so they don't want more immune boosting. They want some protection. So I think safer vaccine is the kill the virus vaccine. I think the Covaxin is the best vaccine to start with, rather than other platforms. So I will vouch for Covaxin vaccine in 15 to 18 age group till we have a better vaccines and better data with other vaccines. Of course, Pfizer has data. The Moderna has data on children, but we don't have it available here. So till that time we should be very sure with the children. There's no hanky-panky with the children. You can't do anything with the children. You have to have a proper, rigorous, good data to suggest that this is a vaccine which children should be taking. So I think at this point of time, Covaxin has a good data, and we should go with the Covaxin.
And that's for 15 and above.
Of course, we have data. The studies are on for 2 to 15 as well. Bharat Biotech has said that they are ready with the data for that as well, with the trial. So, and it's safe in those age groups, but of course the approval has to come from the DGCI, and the body has to sit and give the approval. So that's when they will be coming up. Probably in the next phase we'll start vaccinating 2 to 15 years of age also. But I think the vaccine is safe in all age groups in children, because we have the data. Of course, the official approval is yet to come on that age group.
Okay, and on this note, I wanted to just inform the audience that I just spoke to the hospital just a few minutes before the call started, and Hiranmani Hospital will start the Covaxin for 15 and above from Monday onwards. That's correct, Doctor?
Yes, it is correct, and of course we have started the booster doses as well already. So we are in run with the government. Whatever the policies are there, we are right from the beginning. We are ahead of times, and we have been doing things at the nick of the time. Yes.
Absolutely. Doctor, on that note, and given all the waves that the hospital has been making, and all of you doctors and your team of people who have been fighting COVID effectively, rather so, I want you to speak about the monoclonal antibodies, because a lot of elderly are falling sick, and a lot of people are haplessly figuring out what to do. Can you talk a bit about monoclonal antibodies, because people have no idea whatsoever?
It's a very, very important question. I think the monoclonal antibodies is the only therapy which has been useful, early phase of disease, where we don't have anything right at this point of time, except for some antiviral drugs which we have, like molnupiravir or Paxlovid. Paxlovid is still not available with us. Molnupiravir, there is data, but should be given or used in high risk patients only. But data which shows that antivirals, the limitation is there, that the infection it prevents is around 9% or 3% death, reduces the death by 3 to 4%. Of course, earlier promise was 30%, but it has a relative risk. So molnupiravir, we will of course use it, but the best data comes out from the antibodies, where they have shown that 7 or 8 people out of 10, if infected with virus, won't require hospitalization, won't require oxygenation, won't require ventilator, and less risk of dying if these people are infected and been given these monoclonal antibodies. So that's the very strong data with monoclonal antibodies, more than what we have from the any other agents still we have in the early phase of the disease, not in late phase, because monoclonal antibodies won't work in the late phase of disease. Having said so, what is monoclonal antibodies? Let's understand. These are antibodies which are synthetically made. They are made to block your virus. What they will block? They will block the S protein. So S protein is on the virus. With the help of this S protein, the virus tends to stick to the human cells and go inside and replicate. If you block this S protein only, the S protein or the virus is not unable to attach itself to human cells, and is not able to replicate. So the infection stops there itself. So what we are doing, we are not allowing the virus to stimulate your immune system. And when the immune system is not stimulated to that extent, you don't get symptoms, number one. Number two, your lungs will not get infected, because if the immune system is stimulated, the immune system is only killing your other cells. It is trying to attack the virus, it is trying to kill the other organs. So hence you stop the virus here itself, the immune system is not stimulated much, and the infection or goes away there itself. So that's a monoclonal antibody for you. Where you will use it? In elderly people. The indications are in elderly people more than 65 years of age, who have all the conditions I have talked about: diabetes, blood pressure, heart disease, coronary artery disease, obesity, on immunocompromised therapies, cancers, chemotherapy. All of these people, kidney patients, all of these patients can be given monoclonal antibodies very safely. No side effects. Anaphylactic reactions were seen in 0.03% of the patients. So very less risk of getting a problem with, and we have seen no issue, because we are given to hundreds of people till now, and there's no issue whatsoever with monoclonal antibodies. So that is a practical experience we are carrying, and we are seeing a lot of good things with monoclonal antibodies. Of course, people who are adults at 40 years, 30 years, have diabetes, have other conditions, they also can be vulnerable. So they also can use the antibodies. It's not that you can't use, because they have the medical conditions. So they also can go for monoclonal antibodies if available. But monoclonal antibodies is way forward for initial infection, not late infection. You have to give in best time to give is initial 1 to 4 days only. After that, generally don't see much of effect. 5, 6 days. The packet insertion says 10 days, or FDA has given the document of saying that you can give within 10 days. But I'll say that within 4 or 5 days is the best time to give monoclonal antibodies. After that, which generally not very effective as a therapy.
Very comprehensive conversation on that monoclonal antibodies. I still have 3 simple questions. A, are there, can it be given before infection to keep an infection away?
Yes, it is one of the important indications what FDA has said. That suppose you are exposed to somebody who was COVID positive recently and been very, very close contact. As a post-exposure prophylaxis, you can take the monoclonal antibody. So it is a FDA expanded indication, clearly indication that somebody who is exposed to the COVID positive patient and who's elderly, will not say that immunocompetent people should take it, but people who are elderly, very sick, 80 years, 89 years, bedridden, and all these conditions which I just talked about, they can avail the benefits of monoclonal antibodies. Beware that now monoclonal antibodies are working good for Delmicron virus or Delta virus. For Omicron virus, the current antibody which we have in India may not work well. There's been because of the mutation it carries. So we have to now have a challenge of understanding what virus you are suffering from. Of course, Omicron virus can be very mild. It may not go to lung part so soon, or not in all the people. But challenge is identifying whether you are suffering from Delta or Omicron. And that challenge can be circumvented partially by understanding whether there is a S gene dropout in your RT-PCR. So now ICMR has said itself that we are recommending, or Maharashtra government is also saying that the labs should do the RT-PCR with the S gene dropout strategy. Means the kits which you are using should be able to tell you whether there is a S gene dropout or the S gene is there in the virus. Right? So if there is S gene dropout, that means Omicron most likely. If the S gene is present, it is going to be a Delta virus most likely. Hence, we can safely use monoclonal antibodies which we have in India with people who have S gene in the RT-PCR. So this is how we are able to take this. Of course, there's an antibody called sotrovimab which we don't have, which can be used against Omicron, which is there in the US. We still don't have in India. But the current antibodies can be used against the Delta variant where there's a S gene is present. So we see 3 genes: E gene, N gene, and S gene. And if S gene is absent in your RT-PCR, it's a Omicron. S gene is present, is a Delta variant. So this can make us little bit clue that you can use this monoclonal antibody.
Very, very interesting. There's always so much to learn. My second question on monoclonal antibodies is any hospital able to give this, or are there particular hospitals in Bombay who can do this?
Yeah, most super specialty hospitals are offering this therapy now. So you can go to any super specialty hospital, tertiary care center will be able to offer you. Seven Hills is also offering the monoclonal antibodies. So everybody is offering. All COVID centers will offer monoclonal antibodies because it's standard of care now. So yes, you will get anywhere, and you can go wherever. The vicinity super special hospital or tertiary care hospital and avail the therapy.
And my last question on this is there any intervention? Is there excess inpatient time for this treatment?
No, it is not. We have to observe for at least 4 hours or 5 hours to see for any reaction. After that, patient can go home. So it's a daycare kind of a therapy.
Is it administered?
Right? For the insurance,
vaccinate? It is like an injection.
It is an injectable therapy which has to be given over 1 hour. And after that, there will be 3 hours of observation max. And after that, the patient can go home and isolate himself at home. So it's a very simple, and generally there's no problem after taking a therapy. There's no fever, nothing. Of course, there's no reaction to the monoclonal antibodies what we have seen. So it's a very safe therapy. That's why within 4 hours you can go home and stay at home after that.
Very, very helpful, Doctor. A few last things, especially about children, because that's where most of our audience questions are. Before that, I want to just announce and let everyone know in Powai and whoever's watching this that Lakers, of course, Rotary Group of Mumbai Lakers, as that they did with the vaccination drive last year and this year, they are collecting data for the hospital for the children's vaccine. So please reach out to them. We will put a Google form here and on our WhatsApp group. So just make sure that you get added there, and this process is smooth for you. The vaccination drive for children starts on Monday. Moving on, Doctor, children are getting affected. That is a statement that I know is a fact, but how affected, and are you worried?
Yes and no, because I never saw so many adolescents and children affected in the last waves, of course, with the symptoms which they are carrying now. Very high grade fever, headache, body ache, such a severe sore throat, and they are coming up with the severe symptoms this time. Of course, it is not culminating into the pneumonias or the breathlessness or ending up with the hospitalization because of the complication as yet. But yes, we are seeing a severe symptoms, specifically in adolescent age group and children, which we never saw. The reason is very clear that they are not vaccinated, of course. So because all other people are vaccinated, the children age group, that is a vulnerable age group which is not vaccinated, showing severe symptoms. Having said so, the good news is that we have not seen, as I said, complications like lung complications or other issues, which are seen with adults as yet. So that is a good part. But otherwise, yes, you're right. We are seeing a very severe symptoms in children this time.
Do we need to keep children completely at home? No school, of course. No playground, no nothing. Back to 2020?
Yes, of course. Because again, we are not sure about the behavior of the children. Masking may be an issue with the children. Suppose if the child is disciplined wearing mask, but children they have discipline issues always. They will forget wearing mask, and if their friends are meeting, like adolescent age group, very difficult to control teenagers. So yes, I think till the wave is out and the vaccination drive is a little bit complete, I think we should use the similar tactics what we used in the first or second wave. Having said so, it's going to be a short wave. We understand because of the transmissibility of the virus in and out very fast. So hope so it will not be a prolonged wave, and the children will not be suffering as they suffered in the first wave or maybe second wave. But having said so, again, they should be masking if possible. Yes, mask them. No schooling till the wave is over, and we are sure about the vaccinations. Once the vaccination drive is over, maybe 1 or 2, 3 months, probably again we can go back to the similar kind of a life which we are. Of course, new normals should be there. There should not be. We should be without mask, but new normal can be adopted again after maybe 6 weeks or so. I think within 6-8 weeks we should be over with the wave. That is my calculation, because the data which comes from the South America, 90% of the people are infected in 25 days. So in and out in very fast and very quick, maybe 50 days, maybe max 60 days, we should be there again to the baseline.
60 days. You started with 3 weeks and now you've gone to 60 days, which is
So peak will
nice.
come in 25 days. So peak will come in 25 days. So 2 to 3 weeks it will take to build up. 2 to 3 weeks it will take to come down. So at least we have to give 6 weeks. And we don't know how the behavior is in our population is massive in Mumbai. So having said so, we have to give some kind of a discount on that.
Doctor, as a mother, I really one very important question to ask. We spoke a lot about long COVID last time. You are a GP for most patients that you have long term. What are the long COVID situations you have seen from your patients of last year? And what do you foresee for children who are going through the current, whatever, Omicron, Delcron, whichever? What do we do as parents to make our children most?
So, very tough questions for everybody here. First of all, I will touch base upon the long COVID syndrome or long COVID symptoms. Yes, the long COVID symptoms are still being seen in some percentage of population, and most common it is fatigue and body ache, and chronic fatigue syndrome. What we have seen, unable to concentrate on works, COVID fog, what we saw, brain fog. The focus is not there. Attention span is becoming lesser and lesser. That is what being seen as a repercussions. Today, I had a patient who had issue with the eating. So there's no satiation to eating after the COVID infection. So youngsters we have seen, probably they have issues with the eating also. Either they will not feel hungry or they have stopped eating, or they have a problem with unable to control the eating. So these things, because the virus is also infecting the hypothalamus, somewhere the virus is also affecting the hypothalamus, which is the appetite center. So maybe there could be issues with some percentage of patients. And of course, lockdown itself can create stress for children. In the houses, they are not going out much, not mingling. That also has caused stress issues, stress eating in the children. Those things have been seen and creating more obesity in children. And of course, the behavioral issues, which we all know, the mental health experts will speak about that the increase in the screen time, the other behavioral issues, temper tantrums, anger. Online schooling is becoming difficult. Children are not able to focus. Hardly people are sometimes attending 2 or 3 classes, and after that they are just switching off the cameras and not being able to focus on online studies. Very difficult to actually focus. Is right on their part also, because they are children. Of course, they don't have the attention span is going shorter and shorter. So repercussions of it in future when the physical school will start is we have to see that how they are going to cope up with the physical school, how they are going to attend to the physical school, because attention span is rapidly declining and the cognitive capability is also reducing in the children. Of course, the children who have not seen their school, it is going to be more with them because they have never seen how physical school is. So all these things the time will tell, and of course mental health experts will be much better to talk about these issues with the children, how to deal with them. Of course, we have to deal with them patiently. We have to listen out to them and try to see that talk it out to them. Don't give it to the demands all the time. We need to understand that we also have to be firm on certain points. Try to cut down the screen time. Try to pack their schedules by various activities. And of course, online they are not able to meet friends, so we can have organize online meetings, so they are engaged with friends somehow. So these are the things small things which we can do. Of course, by and large, it's way too difficult because parents are also very busy with their work. They are also online throughout. So I understand there's a practical difficulty, but some things which we can do from our side, these are the things, pointers which we should do and try to incorporate. Be little firm, be little understanding as well at the same time.
Thank you, doctor. One last question to ask before I really have to say bye to you, because I know I'm taking on your time and your patients are waiting. Any message for the elderly who are once again for the 3rd year in a row, calendar year, feeling very vulnerable?
Yes, a pertinent question again, because it is whenever the wave comes, they are the first the set of people who are going to be affected more, as we always seen, and that's the reason the panic and the anxiety is palpable with elderly people. And that's the reason that the panic is also with the youngsters who are staying with them. They say that I don't want to infect my mom or my dad or my uncle or aunt. So that is also seen. Having said so, vaccination has done good for us. So the chances that the infection would uh, be culminating into serious kind of infection is much lesser. We also have studied the virus. We know much better about the virus. We know we have many therapies now, and we know exactly when to use what. Now we are more clear about the treatment part better than before. So at least that part we are sure that we are going to treat you much better in much better way. We are going to supervise you in a much better way. We know where the problem is going to occur, and we can actually stop the problem as it starts to arise, because we know when it's going to occur. So all these things matter. We have the situation in the control. In short words, that we can control the situation because we know the virus behavior in a much better way, how it is behaving rather than before. So don't panic. We have the things in control. You have to be patient, and you have to be following what your doctor says, and visit your healthcare facility, or test yourself in time, or take your treatment in time, so that you can save the day and don't get hospitalized.
Thank you so much, Doctor. There is so much to ask. I have so many unasked questions, but I think you've covered all of it. So I must thank you, and more than you, the audience who has been really keen on listening to you. And I know that they've been waiting for this session. And Doctor, thanks a lot for taking up so many of these maybe silly sounding questions, but it's very important to hear these from a very known a person who we all know around us.
Thank you, Pallavi, and thank you, viewers. And I hope I have made my points very clear and crisp, and hope to see you soon again on this platform, so that we can discuss more and talk more about these things and help out each other in this trying times. Thank you so much.